Garnet was, it came into being in, well, it was booming by 1912. It was, by 1897, it was a town. In 1912, it was up and booming. Had 13 saloons, just like this one, all in the town. And behind you, Foam Hotel, the buildings, the town had 1,500 to 1,500 people. And gold, there was gold in them thar hills, because the miners were all over the hills digging holes, and there were 3 major mines in the area. In 1912, though, they had a fire. The fire took out the most of this side of the street and took all the buildings out and took out a good portion of the stores on the other side. And thereafter, it started dying out. The gold had been replaced by the war. 1917 brought World War I, and during the war, the miners couldn't get dynamite, so they had to make their living elsewhere. And the war effort was using a lot of people, so they could make more money going to one of the coast and working for the war effort. 1970, 1943, it was the same story. And gold came and went. There's gold still in these hills. But the price of gold has never come back to warrant digging it out. It is $17 an ounce in 1912. And at the time, a man would work a full day for 25 cents. So you can figure how much the $17 an ounce of gold was actually worth. Well, the town actually, it started really in 1895, whenever the gold was first discovered here on top of the mountain. They discovered gold down below much earlier than that, in the 1860s, and the miners just gradually followed the gold by placer mining up the mountain. And they came to Garnet, and they used to find the mother lode right here. Well, Garnet and Virginia City both relatively came into being around the same time, and they were both gold mining. But the difference between Garnet now and Virginia City is Virginia City has been built up. There's still people living there, and you can buy a soda pop in Garnet, in Virginia City. But Garnet has been, you'll see none of that here. BLM's policy seems to be stabilization rather than restoration. We have stabilized all the buildings, and with a little bit of luck, we'll keep them stabilized and keep the pilfering and all the thievery has been done in the past to a minimum. An example of, there are still bottles and all kinds of stuff that is laying around from the early days, but we ask that it be left where it's found. As a matter of fact, there's a law forbidding taking that. Back in the 70s, such things happened as a car pulled up beside the Wells Hotel, which is just down the road here, and was seen loading the beautiful ornately carved doors off the hotel onto his car top and driving away with it. And we've pretty much stopped that just by our mere presence here. The Wells Hotel, it was built in 1895. The Wells, they also owned a hotel down at Beartown, which is about 8 miles south of here, down Bear Gulch. But they built the hotel. It's a beautiful thing, very beautiful for Garnet. It was mostly just buildings thrown up, and these miners didn't put any kind of work into their homes. But in this case, there was a lot of work put into the hotel because it was a beautiful thing. It's 3 stories tall. The entire bottom was the kitchen and the dining room. Second and third stories were for sleeping. Well, there were several hotels, but the only one left standing is the Wells. They all burnt down. There were 13 saloons. There's only 2 left standing. Ollie's Bar, which is across the way, and Kelly's Tavern. Ollie's Bar, it was used until 1943. And Ms. Dahl, who was her husband owned the saloon, lived in this house until 1960. Yes, but you know, it wasn't like Virginia City, because this, unlike most mining towns, it was a family town. It was mostly, we had a school with 43 kids. The families, all the dwellings were family dwellings, or the majority of the dwellings were families. We had a circuit priest that came to the Miners Union Hall, which was on the other side of the hotel, once a month, the whole services. So it was not, no, as far as the brothels and that sort of thing, it was not the type town. We have a jail here in town, but we only have a record of it being used one time, and that was a miner got drunk and shot his neighbor's dog, and they threw him in jail there until they could take him down to Missoula the day after. But the miners most generally wanted to just relax, not raise Cain, just relax in the bars and the saloons, and they seemed to do that.
Coming up this far north?
Yes, we did. A lot of the folks were Southerners. We have a record of Mr. Warren, who had a cabin on the outskirts of town, and he was a Civil War veteran. And he was an unusual character, lived alone and all, but he loved people. He built a park, which is still out there, and we have a trail out to it called the Warren Park Trail. But he built the park so to encourage the townspeople to come to the park, and the kids and the grown-ups would all have to stop by Mr. Warren's place and visit with him.
Now, I guess
we have no record of any shootouts at all in Garnet.
shot up the ceiling.
No, none at all. Like I said, the women did a pretty good job of keeping taps on that sort of thing. They wouldn't allow it.
So, who was the sheriff?
Well, the sheriff would have been down in Missoula or Deer Lodge. They didn't have a sheriff up here of their own. In the wintertime, we get 4 to 6. They would get 4 to 6 feet of snow in here in the wintertime, and the main mode of transportation was sled. And in the summertime, they would rather ship ore in the wintertime because it's much easier on the snow. In the summertime, when they would have to ship it by wagon, they would have to put a pole between the spokes of the wheels and skid them down Bear Flats, skid them down the road to Bear Gulch. Well, there are all kinds of buildings here in Garnet that are historical, and we have a little bit of a history on. We have history on every building, and we went back and researched. In fact, we've talked to the relatives of the people that lived here. Anytime that we can find somebody that has any association with Garnet, we love to hear from them, because that's how we keep improving the history that we have. All the buildings, the Wells Hotel, the honeymoon cabin has a story behind it, the livery stable, Billy Liberty's livery stable. All of the buildings are chock full of history, and we have discovered part of that which we relay through interpretive signs and a self-guided tour brochure that we give out, and we're always adding to it. That's why we really appreciate relatives of the folks that lived here. The honeymoon cabin, it's nothing, it's pretty plain cabin as cabins go, but Mr. Davies that owned the